Welcome, everyone, to Quad Radio, our first night of history as we celebrate ATVs tonight. And one of the greatest in the sport itself, in the history of the sport, Mr. Tim Farr, a top ATV motocross racer as well as TT racer, national champion in both rights. As we say, good evening, Tim, and welcome to our first history night here at Quad Radio.
Hey, it's great to be here. Just running down the road, heading down to Florida with some parts. So, putting in a lot of miles, getting ready for the series.
Wow, that's pretty nice. So out driving on a Wednesday night, must be some pretty important stuff you're packing down there if you're taking it yourself.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think it's all pretty important. You know, we're kind of working to put together a program and want to go out and try to win the championship this year.
Is that right? Now, what program are you working with?
I'm trying to put together a small program with Ryan Wolf on some Hondas and basically, try to give them some really good equipment and, get them training hard. And, I think there's a lot of potential to win a lot of races and possibly a championship.
Wow, that's pretty interesting, and that's good news to hear, Tim, and obviously something that we're going to have to talk a little bit more about. Unfortunately, that's not the subject of what we're calling about tonight for Quad Radio, because that sounds like a pretty interesting one. That ought to get the old internet buzzing anyway right now. So good to hear that, man, and like I say, we will check in with you on that in just a little bit. But I've been getting a lot of emails, and people are saying, hey, how about a history night on Quad Radio? So I thought, what better guy to get for a history night than Tim Farr. So here you are, man. And I guess one of the first questions I got for you, Tim, is how long have you been around the sport, actually, man?
Man, I've been around a long time. I've basically started racing nationals on a four-stroke in 1989 and raced a three-wheeler a little bit before that. I think started in about 86 or 87, so I've got a lot of years in.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So, I mean, to get back to the history of it all, I know you live in northern Ohio. Let's find out a little bit about Tim Farr. Where do you come from? And, tell us the whole story. You were born in a little rundown wooden shack out in the middle of a field someplace, or did you get peed out on a rock someplace and the sun hat you?
I don't know. Might be where I was conceived. I don't know, but as far as where I was born, I was born in a small town, northeastern Ohio, right up on Lake Erie, Ashtabula County, Ashtabula, Ohio, and just grew up, just a normal kid.
Were you on a farm?
As much as possible. Yeah, we had some animals. Grew up kind of on a farm, and I'm the youngest of four kids, two brothers and a sister. So, had some really good times. Grew up, showed horses till I was about 15. Everybody in my family did. It was kind of the thing that it wasn't on my mom's side of the family. It was really big in her family. So we did that for a while, and then my oldest brother and my sister were kind of more into it than my brother, the closest brother to me in age, and myself were more kind of motorheads, mini bikes, go-karts, dirt bikes, anything that we could make go. So we kind of branched off and, we'd buy some scrap or yard sale bikes and figure out how to put them together, and kind of how it all started.
Wow. So how did you get involved in ATV motocross from doing scrapping together bikes and things like that in the backyard and horse shows to ATV motocross? I mean, because in reality, it all seems like a pretty far stretch from each other.
Yeah, it definitely is. But, we lived in the country, and, like I said, my next older brother, Tommy, and I, all we wanted to do was go ride whatever we could get a hold of. Basically, we did that. We rode as much as we could, and it was, we had a blast. I mean, it was.
So I assume, you talked about three-wheelers, so I assume you started racing back before it was an actual quad event. It was a tri-event, I guess you could say. And so were you whenever you actually first threw your leg over a three-wheeler, I guess?
Oh, gosh. I was probably, I don't know, 14, 15 years old when I first rode a three-wheeler.
Really?
And, three-wheelers, motocross wasn't real big. And, it was a pretty big sport for a long time. There was a lot of factory involvement in the early 80s, and I grew up, idolizing, reading the magazines, but basically idolizing guys like Marty Hart and Jimmy White and some of those guys, Donnie Luce. A lot of people are still around the sport now that are good friends of mine, but basically, that's what I always wanted to do. I didn't really ever expect that it would get that far or become a career or, a lifestyle, but it's been really good to me.
Wow. I imagine, you go from your first race. Do you remember exactly where your first race was and how you did and everything?
Yeah, my first race was in Ashtabula, and I guess that plays a big part, too, is Ashtabula, Ohio has, basically the longest running ATV race in the U.S., the Pine Lake TT National, and they would do a TT National, and they would do a 1-hour hare scramble, because a bunch of property, and they still do some hare scrambles there, as well as they still run the TT National. But that was the first race, and it was on a three-wheeler, and I crashed pretty hard. I didn't do so well, but I had fun and kind of got a taste for it. And then actually, my brother started racing a lot more. He was 2 years older than me, and he went to high school with Mark Baldwin, so he and Mark became good friends, and my brother Tommy started racing for Mark, and that was basically the beginning. Mark worked as a machinist in a local machine shop when he, after school and on Saturdays and stuff. So he was pretty well self-taught kind of guy, and just now, it's built it into Baldwin Motorsports, which is basically, an empire in this sport. From engine building to fabricating to pretty much anything you want done, Mark can do it. But that's where it started. They started racing, and I was kind of tagging along all the time, and then I started doing a little bit of racing, and then as my brother got a little bit older and got hurt a few times, he decided maybe it was for him, but he was a really talented, really good rider. But I kind of slid into his deal with Mark, and it's pretty much been wide open ever since.
Wow, that is pretty cool story there for you. Now, tell us a little bit about your career, because back in the day, the motocross and the TT were a Grand National Championship. That's where the GNC name that a lot of people hear still today, and they don't quite understand it, but it was a combination basically of a motocross championship and a TT championship that scored together, for those that don't know. And you basically were the man in that for a long time, but you had a lot of competition throughout the course of your career. Talk a little bit about your career and some of the competition and stuff, because I know Shane Hitt, who is one of your good friends, was probably one of your big rivals as well as good friends back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. Shane was really, really tough. He was especially tough at TT, and it got to a point where he was almost unbeatable. He was on fire, and motocross, he was right there all the time too, and that was the name of the game back then, running in the two different disciplines. You had to be good at both and had to be very consistent at both. And Shane and I were both very good at that. We kind of, I guess the biggest competition in the beginning was Gary Denton won like 8 or 10 championships, I don't remember how many, but he was basically the king, similar to how Bill was so long in GNCC. But we came in and kind of away at it, and in '95 I was able to dethrone Denton, and I won the overall championship, after all the years of, his domination. So that was really cool. And, that it kind of took off from there. I built a lot of confidence, and then I went on and won a bunch more championships. But there was a slew of guys. Doug Gust has always been absolutely amazing rider, and then super, super tough competition. Travis Spader. Gosh, there's so many guys. Corey Ellis.
A lot of names have come and gone through the years, haven't they? It's pretty interesting. And then, of course, you were there whenever we saw more recent heroes like Jeremiah Jones being born. I guess his career being born into greatness.
Yeah, for sure. Jeremiah came in and pretty much smoked all of us for a while there. He was young, he was extremely fast, and he just kind of raised the whole bar, I guess, so to say. He came in and just had a crazy, wild, fast riding style, and we all had to, basically get our butt kicked for a year or two, and then kind of learn that speed and that style, because he was putting it to us pretty hard. And we did. Everybody picked it up, and then it was full on every weekend. There were 5 or 6 guys that could win, and at the end of the year, it was whoever could win and be, on the podium the most consistently, and I was always really good at that. But Jeremiah definitely was crazy fast, and just a really good guy and amazing rider. And he came in a little bit later, I guess. The guys we were talking about before, early on, was Denton, and Gus was always there too, and Shane and myself. Pretty much the main guys that you would hear about back then. And Spader. I would say Spader too. He was always super tough.
Right, and I know that we've seen a lot. You've seen a lot of change in the sport itself over the years. Talk a little bit about that. From when you first started coming to the Nationals to what you see it and where you see it today. What kind of history do you see it in a nutshell? I guess is the question.
I guess the easiest way to kind of sum it up. It's completely changed. It's grown so much from where it was when I started. But you have to realize that we were racing 250Rs from when I started on a two-stroke. They were basically came out in 86. I started the pro class on a two-stroke in 91 and raced the 250R until 2000, and then started building some hybrid stuff with, four-stroke engines, 2000, 2001. And we really didn't see any production bikes from manufacturers until, stuff that was really race capable, until 2003, 2004. And that's really, the sport steadily grew from where it was in, 1989, 90, 91. It had fallen way off, no manufacturer involvement. And the aftermarket pretty much held it up. So we got through those years. We raced because we loved it. Nobody was making money. Everybody was pretty much spending every dime they had to race. And, from that to where it is now is, in both motocross and GNCC is a testament to promoters, and also the fact that the production machinery came back in and the manufacturers had a reason and a product to promote, and it just raised the level.
Sure did. Well, I tell you what, Tim, we're about out of time tonight, but I do want to say thanks to you for the time that you have given us, and I do want to get back with you on the Brian Wolf thing. Good luck on your drive down there, and good luck with everything with building that team and trying to get something going there, okay?
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, man.
All right. That's Tim Farr. I'm Rodney Tomlin. This is Quad Radio.